Wow, that's what my voice sounds like today. Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 2nd through 8th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 1 show, I watched 6 movies, and I listened to 2 books. First this week I finished Under the Idolatries, which is one of the 2 group reads for the Queer Lit Readathon. This one takes place in Nigeria in the 1960s, 1970s, and it might have hit the 1980s by the end of it, although I can't quite remember at this point. And as it starts out, there's a civil war happening, which has some devastating consequences for the family of our protagonist, who at that point is a young girl. In reaction to what is going on in her community and what is going on with her housing, her mother sends her away to live with somebody else while she goes off to see if she can move into a family home and then eventually bring her daughter there. While she's off staying with this other couple, she basically becomes a house girl to them and is doing all of their chores for them, and one day meets this other girl who she basically befriends and brings home with her. Some feelings start to happen between these 2 girls, but then they're found out and the people that are looking after them are not pleased about it, and it really goes from there. This is kind of a family saga, so it does go over quite a chunk of time, and it has to do with this character coming into her queerness and doing what society tells her she has to do because it's not legal to be queer. Because at this point, and at least at the point of publication, which I believe was about 10 years ago, in Nigeria, you could just be put to death for being queer. I'm very glad we picked this as a group read because it reminded me that I've been meaning to pick it up for quite some time, and I recommend it. In order to just read something a little bit more quick and easy, I turned to a graphic novel, and that is Rabbit Chase. This is something I found out about on Alex's channel over at Pucks and Paperbacks, and this is an indigenous retelling of Alice in Wonderland. Our main character is non-binary and kind of cast out by schoolmates, but is on this cultural trip, and instead of following everybody one way in the woods, goes a different direction, and then, falls down certain rabbit holes. Not literally, but figuratively and spiritually. I found this was a really interesting twist on the original tale. I'm not trying to make rabbit puns, and yet here we are. Finally, the other group read for the Queer Lit Readathon is The Skin and Its Girl, and I also read that this week. This book also spans many, many years, and it doesn't span them at all in order. It is very non-linear. The narrator of this book is a daughter who is born shortly after her mother has divorced her father because he was cheating, and shortly after she's born, her skin turns blue. This is a little bit of a problem because originally she was going to be giving this child up for adoption. However, certain characters are made known of what's going on, and she ends up keeping this child. Through the different sections of this book, we see this child growing up. The child's name, by the way, is Elspeth, although her great aunt calls her Betty. And it was very easy for me to remember this name because I have a niece of this name, Elspeth, not Betty. In any case, the narrator is not the main character of this book. The main character, I would argue, is her great aunt, although this is also kind of an ensemble piece. This really has to do with the family history, where certain family members came from. There's a late twist that I didn't see coming. And at the same time that this child is born, the family's traditional soap factory in Palestine is actually bombed out of existence. As it turns out, her grandmother actually sold it many years ago, and that caused a rift in the family, and it goes from there. It's a very complicated, very complex story, which means it felt to me like it was twice as long than it actually was, and I probably understood half as much as I probably thought I did, but it's definitely a worthwhile story. I loved getting to see these reveals and understanding different characters more and more thoroughly as time went on. I do not know what my voice is doing. It's first thing in the morning, and it's just being weird, so apologies if you've noticed. As for the one show I watched this week, we watched a couple of episodes of Doctor Who. We're still in the 2nd season, and there's not a ton I know about the show, other than when this particular version of the Doctor and this companion split, apparently it's pretty traumatic and people cry a lot. So as they get closer and closer and closer together, I get more and more worried as to when these characters are eventually going to have to split off, because literally that's all I know. It's very traumatic and people cry a lot when it happens, but I don't know why. So yippee, that's something to look forward to. As for the 6 movies I watched, let me tell you about the ones I watched early in the week and then the 4 I watched yesterday for a very specific reason. The first movie is The Fall Guy, which is an action romance starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, and it is a lot of fun. Essentially, Ryan Gosling plays a stuntman, and there's this woman that he's been seeing, and he really likes flirting with her on set and things like that. He's on top of the world while he's working because he's really good at what he does, and her big time dream is to become a director. Something happens on set of the movie that they're both working on, and then they end up not seeing each other for quite some time. However, when he's called back into the game, it's for a movie that she is directing, but she didn't ask him to be there. And then he's drawn into this nefarious plot to try to figure out what happened to the lead actor, because if they can't find him, then they can't finish the movie, and it goes from there. This has a ton of really cool action sequences, as it should when you're working with a main character who is a stuntman, but then it's also this whole meta situation where they're making a movie, but they're also talking about the romance of the movie as though it's the romance of these characters. There's some fun split screen elements. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I've been a fan of Ryan Gosling since the Breaker High days, and this did nothing to dissuade me from that. The other action film we watched this week is Kate. This is about this woman who works as a hired assassin, and she is just about to get out of the game, and then something happens, meaning she really has to do one last mission. This is absolutely fantastic. It's another very combat heavy action flick, and I just really enjoyed it. I kind of knew what one of the twists was going to be, but I didn't know how we were going to get into this situation. All I knew going into it is this movie was called Kate, so I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Very much enjoyed it. The casting is also great. And just when you think you're at a point where you're like, well, I guess we're gonna roll credits, you're like, oh, there's still more to this movie, which I enjoyed. As for the other 4 movies I watched this week, like I mentioned, I watched them yesterday. I watched them all with my best friend, and we watched them in lieu of going to our 20-year reunion for high school because we didn't really want to pay $65 for something we didn't know what we were going to be getting. I might not have even been able to eat the food because it's not like they even asked if people had dietary restrictions before just being like, money please, and not telling us exactly what that money was going towards. So we decided to have our own celebration, so we stayed home, we ate snacks, we had gin, and we watched 4 movies from early 2004, aka around the time we were graduating high school. First, and the only movie on this sublist I had actually seen before, many times, Mean Girls. I don't feel like I need to explain Mean Girls to you because I feel like you probably should have watched it by now. In fact, there's a musical remake, which is also very good, but we were watching the original from 2004, of course. Katie Heron has never been to a traditional American high school and finds herself there when she's 16 and has to acclimate herself to the situation, and ends up being friends with 2 very different groups and reporting on one to the other, and mean things happen. From there, we went on to watch 3 movies from early 2004 that I had somehow never gotten around to actually seeing. Like, I'd heard of these movies before, but I'd never actually seen them. The first one is 13 Going on 30. In this one, our main character turns 13 years old, and she makes this wish that she could be 30 instead, and because of movie magic and a very convenient plot device, and also just the cuteness of her best friend, she magically finds herself waking up and she is 30 years old and she doesn't know how she got to this state, and she finds herself searching out her best friend from when she was 13 to explain to her what happened, why aren't they friends anymore, and how is she supposed to live this dream life that she's now living, but has no idea how she got from 13 to 30. This is adorable. There are some uncomfortable situations just because this is a 13-year-old in a 30-year-old's body, so there was definitely one scene in a bar that was a little bit upsetting. But other than that, Mark Ruffalo is our love interest. He is freaking adorable. He and I actually locked eyes once, so anytime I talk about him in a movie, I'm just like, ah yes, we locked eyes once and gave each other a nod because I was working at an event, so I couldn't be like, oh my goodness, it's a celebrity. Not that I would anyway, because I'm not that type of person. And he was very appreciative that I did not point out, oh my god, a celebrity, because there were many people around him that had not spotted him. Or at least that's how I interpreted our head nod situation. After that, we went on to watch Ella Enchanted, which I don't understand why I never watched this one, because I've been a big fan of Anne Hathaway since she was on a show that I want to say was called Get Real. It was cancelled really, really early on, and it's been so long that since I've seen it that I can just remember that it was like a family drama situation. I think there might have been a family member that died, something like that. But I remember really enjoying her in it, and then also really enjoying her name because that is also the name of William Shakespeare's wife, which is something I knew because I was a giant theater nerd. In any case, this film is a very, very loose, very anachronistic retelling of Cinderella, in which the Ella character actually gets a blessing, or we would like to say curse, from a fairy godmother, which is to always be obedient, which means when people tell her to do something, she has to do it. She cannot break out of this situation, which sucks. When her mother dies, her father remarries, she gets these stepsisters, and they are very, very, very needy and greedy and just tell her to do things, and she ends up having to do them, and one of them catches on that she literally has to do these things and tries to use that against her. This is fun. It had some musical numbers. She made some friends along the way. I really enjoyed it. Finally, after this, we watched a Mandy Moore movie, which is called Chasing Liberty. I knew nothing going into this one. I just knew I had not seen it before, and it had Mandy Moore in it, and Taryn was like, "You'll love it, let's go." And it turns out that Mandy Moore is the daughter of the President of the United States, played by Mark Harmon, who I know from NCIS. I said that like I know him personally, but no, I do not. I've seen him on a television program. And she is 18 years old and finds it very difficult to date because obviously she has a Secret Service detail. And at the beginning of this film, we see her go on a date with a guy she's been wanting to see for quite some time, and it doesn't really go well. Mostly because his friend is not a very smart human being, but here we are. When her family has to travel to Europe for various business and presidential related things, she's like, okay, we're gonna do that. I'm going to fulfill all my obligations, but there's going to be one night where I only have 2 people guarding me. I'm gonna go to this concert with my friend and I'm gonna have a great time. However, when she gets there, she realizes that there are a bunch of people that work for her dad in plain clothes. That was not the deal, and she decides she needs to be rebellious and try to get herself out of this situation, which prompts a very advanced European adventure, which I very much enjoyed. Because here's the thing about me and watching literally anything with me. If something shows up on screen on a movie or a TV show or a video game my roommate happens to be playing, if I've been there before, I have to, it's a compulsion, say, I've been there. By the end of this movie, I was saying it under my breath because I knew I was probably getting annoying at this point, because they started out in Prague, which I had been to a lot of the locations that were shown in this, so I was like, oh, I know exactly where they are. If you were to turn right, there's this big square, all these types of things, and I was just excited because I thought like there was going to be a bunch of stuff in Prague, which I've only spent 2 weeks in, but I was able to be like, yes, I've been to this location. However, from Prague, they then go on to Venice, which I've been there, so I was able to point out more things, being like, oh yeah, they're on that bridge. If you were to turn this way, there's a really cool art museum right there. After that, I believe they're in Austria, which I have not been to, so I was not annoying during that section, but then they were in Berlin, which I have been to, and then there's a short period where the character is in Harvard, which I've also been to, and then at the end of the movie we're in London, which I have also been to. Also, if you're a Downton Abbey fan, the love interest in this movie is played by Mary's second husband, so not Cousin Cutie, but the race car driver. And he is not the only person in these 4 movies from Downton Abbey. One of the ogres in Ella Enchanted, also from Downton Abbey. Also, I definitely saw the same shade of pink in all 4 of these movies, which was just a weird thing that tied these together, and we were seeing these weird parallels between these different movies as we were watching them, so that was fun. On to the audiobooks I listened to, the first one being The Death I Gave Him, which is a futuristic retelling of Hamlet, which I didn't actually know going into this. I just knew I had to read this for some reason, and I put a hold on it at some point in the past, and I came in. And as it starts playing, it's told in kind of a documentary format. This person has put together what happened on a certain night using surveillance footage and people's notes and different technological reasons, and then also somebody wrote a book about the situation. And as it starts out, the AI for the building in question is called Horatio, and of course my brain will always go to Hamlet when you use that name. Any theater dork will do that. But I told myself, just because there's a character named Horatio doesn't mean anything, Kathy. And then as it continued, I was like, no, it is really a Hamlet retelling. It definitely is. We have all the classic things of, did my uncle kill my father? A whole rift with my mother. To be or not to be, that is the question. Not to mention it's taking place in a fortress in Denmark. Obviously, there are very key differences. I've already talked about one of them. There's an AI character for one. For 2, this is a research lab, and our main character, Hayden, has actually been trying to figure out how to keep people alive so that they never die. And that's research that's been very, very guarded, which is why that he thinks that his father, who is also working on this research with him, is now gone. And his father is like, you need to avenge me, because he somehow managed to leave him a video message, basically being like, if somebody takes me out because of this research, you need to get revenge. A lot of this was really imaginative and interesting, and this one ended up being queer, sort of, because although Hayden definitely had a thing and possibly still has feelings for our Ophelia character, who is named Felicia, there's also some very sexually gratifying material between him and Horatio, who, as I mentioned, is the AI system for the building. So take that as you will. I'm a little bit too far away from the allosexual section of the spectrum to really think that that was necessary. But you do you. The other audiobook I listened to is Small Game. This one is about 5 people who are on a reality show who are put somewhere in the middle of the forest, and they are just told to survive. It's called Civilization. They know they're going to be there for 6 weeks, and they're basically given nothing and just told to survive this situation. Our main character, Mara, actually grew up off-grid, so she has a lot of skills like foraging and that type of thing, and for the most part the people there with her also have a lot of skills. The only other girl is there because she wants to be famous. She flat out says that when the cameras aren't rolling and they're kind of getting to know each other, and almost instantaneously there's this kind of draw towards this other woman, and that's the queer element of this story. However, the larger situation of this does not go any way that anyone planned. I thought this was really cool, and it made me never want to be in a circumstance like this. Like, sure, would it be fun to be on a show that kind of sets you down somewhere and you just have to like hang out for 6 weeks, and you know that if something goes terribly wrong there is staff on site that will fix the problem? That sounds great. That's not what happened in this book. So yeah, anytime I go into the woods I'm gonna want to know how I got there and how to get out, and yeah. And it makes me never want to take any form of multi-day backpacking trip through a forest ever. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!